All right. Well, welcome to NewLifeCast, episode number 5 now, I think. Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
Today we have our wonderful guest, Ben Weieneth. I'm pretty excited about this podcast, if I'm being honest, because, I've talked to Ben and probably more than most people at New Life, but I still feel like there's a lot I don't know about his internal world and his life, and so I'm pretty excited. My first question for you, Ben, we always start with this question, is what is your favorite color, and what does that say about you as a person?
My favorite color has changed over the years. When I was in high school, I liked dark colors, like dark blue, dark gray.
Mm-hmm.
And since graduating college, I've moved more toward brighter colors. I would say green is my favorite color.
That's a pretty popular one around here.
If I had to pick one.
What shade of green?
Bright green, like a tree color, the grass color.
Mm-hmm.
But I also like combinations of colors. So especially like a white or a black with a bright color. Yeah.
And what does that say about you as a person?
What does that say about me as a person?
You've gone from dark to light, or?
I've gone from, I don't know if shy is the right word, subdued maybe, to more confident and outgoing.
Awesome.
I like that answer.
I'm still very less confident and outgoing than most people,
Uh-huh.
but I'm more so than I was in high school.
Well, you're being interviewed on a podcast.
That's true.
That
that
isn't
other
private.
people are going to listen to. So
Yes.
we're going to share this with other people. Did you know that?
I was aware of that.
You were aware of that coming into this?
Yes.
Okay.
I was not aware until I left the house that there was a video component as well. I
Oh,
thought
okay.
it was audio only.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But
We like to keep some part of the podcast secret from the guests.
yes.
Like whether it'll start on time, what all we do, what we ask.
Secrets are good.
That's a secret for us too. We don't know.
All right. So generally we try and just, at least this has been our go-to, is try and understand your childhood and how that's, formed the person you are or not formed the person you are, and just kind of follow that path through your life. So,
All right.
when and where were you born?
I was born in La Crosse, Wisconsin.
Okay.
I have no memories of
I
Wisconsin.
did not know that.
Uh-huh. How long were you living in Wisconsin then after you were born?
We moved to Iowa when I was about 2 years old.
Okay.
We lived in New Hall,
Mm-hmm.
small town, like, I don't know, 10 minutes west of Cedar Rapids.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was about 15, 16-ish, we moved to the farm on the near Cedar Rapids on the west end where my parents live now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
What was your, you don't remember anything in Wisconsin, what was your earliest memory? Or what is your earliest memory?
I have some memories of when my bedroom was still in the upstairs room before it got moved into the basement. But not any specific memories.
Mm-hmm.
How many siblings do you have?
I have 3 siblings. I have an older sister and then a younger brother and sister.
I was just thinking, is Laura younger than him? Okay, so what is this like spacing between you guys?
Laura is a year and a half older than I am.
Okay.
Daniel is about 2.5 years younger, and then Sarah is another year younger than Daniel.
So what was it like growing up as a Weineth?
We didn't really know anyone in New Hall. All of our neighbors were pretty old.
Mm-hmm.
So we recognized them, but we didn't talk to them. And it's basically all of our activities were in Cedar Rapids or at, a friend's house.
Mm-hmm.
We were pretty close with the Howingtons. They lived in a house in more or less the country.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, mostly it was when we came into town, we would meet with New Life people.
Mm-hmm.
And then later there was a math and science group that we would hang out with.
Mm-hmm.
But growing up, it was mostly just me and my siblings.
Yeah.
And so pretty early on. I think it was through the Bright Lights group that Laura attended, by the Malleys. They had a book called Making Brothers and Sisters Best Friends. And Laura decided that that should apply to our family. And so she kind of top-down instituted the idea that we should get along as siblings. And for the most part, that worked. We had conflicts, obviously, but like Daniel's my best friend even to this day, and I get along with all my siblings and my parents, and so it was a very good environment in that regard. It did tend to isolate me from making friends outside of my family, but yeah, it was pleasant.
So how did she institute that and make you guys get along?
So some of it was just, being a mediator and trying to resolve conflicts as they came up. She's a very logical and thoughtful person. Like she's not very emotional.
Yeah.
And then another part of it was she would organize like volunteer chores that we would do without being asked.
Volunteer chores.
So like cleaning stuff up or just doing things for the parents that we would do as a group of siblings.
So how old was she when she decided that this is what you guys needed to do?
Being homeschooled, it was hard to keep track of like what grade I'm in and what age I am.
I feel that.
I was probably 8, 9, 10-ish in that range.
And you just decided like, yeah, I want to listen to you. Or did it take some convincing?
It's hard to remember.
Yeah, it sounds like she wanted to be the mom though.
Yeah.
Which is a common oldest child thing.
Yes. And I did get along with my mom, so it wasn't very, troublesome.
Yeah. Something that I'm very curious about. I mean, like, I've known your family my whole life, which obviously you're older than me, so your family has been around a bit longer than I have.
Yeah, I remember when you lived in Vinton and you were the baby of the family.
Yeah. Something that I'm very interested in understanding is you and Daniel and Laura as well are like very logical, and Sarah to some degree, but very like logical and like intellectual, and like your mom definitely doesn't strike me that way, and your dad like some, but then
I don't think he says enough for you to be able to know.
Well, I've talked to John a fair amount, but he definitely doesn't like he's obviously very intelligent, but he doesn't like put himself forward as like I'm an intellectual or whatever.
Yeah, I don't really know where that came from.
Yeah, that's what I'm really interested in. Is like
a lot of my cousins are that way.
Okay.
And so I don't know if it just skipped a generation or where it was all coming from. But
so how did that dynamic work out when you were kids? Like when did you realize like, oh, I'm a bit different from my parents or whatever?
I don't know. I don't know that I really saw it as like that was the difference between us, more so than just they're older than I am and they have more responsibilities.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know.
So what's your theory for, I guess, the cousins? It skipped a generation. So what are your cousins like that you would say they're similar to you?
Nerdy. They're into Star Wars. They're into, I don't know.
Did you guys spend very much time with your cousins growing up?
So my dad's side of the family, all the cousins were a little bit older than us. I think my dad was the youngest in his family. And so we would see them fairly often, but we didn't really play with them or hang out in that way. And then my mom's side, the cousins were our age, but they lived in Seattle. And so we would see them maybe once a year. We would make a trip out there. Or they would sometimes make a trip out here. But yeah, they were into, brainy type video games, or they played chess, they played Risk, those sorts of games. And so we would relate to them in that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did your parents like foster that part of you guys?
It started mostly with Legos.
Legos?
Yeah. Daniel and I, most of our spending money went toward Legos. And we had a giant, like multiple giant bins of Legos that we would keep in our room. And even that was somewhat of a source of conflict for us, because it would be like, how much can you keep certain parts aside for your own use?
Yeah.
Can you make a creation that's just the conglomeration of all the parts that you're trying to save?
Yeah.
And so that's definitely a source of conflict. And the way my siblings and I handled conflict was a lot of, logical arguments more than verbal or physical arguments.
So how did you win a debate in the Weineth household?
You come to an agreement that everyone's okay with.
That's hard sometimes.
Yes.
Well, Lara was telling me when, so she was born, and you and Daniel, and your mom was pregnant, and she was praying for a little sister, but you and Daniel were praying for a little brother, and she tried to convince you that you guys needed a sister, and you said, well, we already have a sister. And she said, yeah, but you already have a brother too. Don't you think I need a sister? And that logic convinced you guys,
Yes.
kind of.
That's a very Laura response to a
Yeah.
conflict. I don't remember that particular conversation, but I definitely believe that it could have happened. So Legos were a big part of it. Computer games. The first computer we had, we mostly just played Asteroids on. But
That's the one where like they're coming down at you and you're shooting them?
no, you're flying in a ship, and you can go across the whole screen, and it like wraps around the edges of the screen on the top and the bottom. And you have a gun that you shoot to destroy the asteroids. But if you crash them, then you die.
Okay. Oh, right. Yeah, I think I can picture that one now.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's all just little line drawings on the screen. But as we got more advanced with our technology, we got CD-ROM games. We never had like game systems, like a PlayStation or anything growing up. It was all computer games. But we would play Roller Coaster Tycoon, and that was, I don't know if it was your family that introduced us to that.
Probably. We were pretty... I mean, my sisters
I
were
remember-
really into Roller Coaster Tycoon.
I remember playing it at your house
Yeah.
before we got it.
When Josh and I got our hands on it, we pretty much just made lions and made them eat people. Oh, sorry. That's Zoo Tycoon. Roller Coaster Tycoon, we just made roller coasters that flew off into nowhere and killed the people.
Of course.
But Zoo Tycoon, it was you make lions and you get as many people in your park as you can. You block off the entrance to the park and then you let the lions out.
Right. It's an optimization problem.
Yes. And the dinosaur version was even better.
Yeah, so that was a big part of it. We also played Age of Empires, and the Star Wars version of that was a big one. And then there was like a Lego racing game that we played a lot. At least my brother and I did play a lot of that. But we wouldn't race on it. We would go off the track and explore the world and get the weapon pickups and shoot each other. And so mostly we would play tag, like a version of tag in that game. And so you could like crash your car into their car to tag them, or shoot them with a weapon to tag them.
So did you spend a lot of your time playing games?
We were limited on how much time per day we could spend on the computer. But we would bargain with our parents. Like if I'm playing a game with my brother, we can use my time and his time consecutively.
Okay.
So
That's
yes.
pretty good.
Yeah. So what was important to your parents, like, to foster in you guys growing up? Like, what did they want their household to look like?
I don't. It's hard to differentiate between what they specifically tried to do versus what came naturally to us versus what like.
Well, you can talk all about all of that.
Right,
what they tried to do and
versus at the time it just seemed like the way things should be.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did Bible memory. Growing up, we would have like a sheet of verses and references, and one of us kids would be at the bottom of the stairs and either my mom or a sibling would be at the top quizzing us. And every time we got a verse right, we could hop up the step. And then if you made too many mistakes on a verse, you could go back down the step. And
You get pushed down.
So who spent the most time at the bottom of the steps?
I don't. We were all pretty good at it.
Okay. You knew you needed to get back up the steps to eat food and live the rest of your life.
Yeah. It was never too much of a back and forth thing.
Yeah.
But most of them we knew pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And then later we did a quizzing program where we would memorize a book of the Bible or multiple books if they were small over the course of a school year and go to tournaments and stuff.
I did like the Awana program, but that's kind of like light compared to sounds like what you're describing.
Yeah. So the first, I think Matthew was the first one I did.
Mm-hmm.
But it was Matthew, Luke, John, Acts and Romans, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, Philemon, Hebrews, and 1st and 2nd Peter.
Wow.
And I'm probably forgetting one.
And was that like all at once having those in your head, or like sequentially?
So there were like a weekly quiz that was over maybe a chapter or two that we would learn that week, and then there were maybe 3 or 4 other like larger meets throughout the year that would have a larger block, and then like at the end of the year it was a quiz over everything in that book. So yeah, that was a pretty big chunk of time in my day. I don't know, a couple hours a day studying.
Yeah, and how do you feel like that's like affected your life now?
Yeah.
It has made me talk a lot faster. I have to be deliberate about speaking slowly.
Yeah.
Because you have 30 seconds to answer the question. And if you don't know what the answer is, you pick the passage that you know the best and you quote as much of it as you can.
That's funny. So were you saved at this time when you were doing this?
Yes, I was saved. I don't know how old I was for sure. I was saved very young and baptized, and then later I couldn't remember being baptized, and I was baptized again. So I was quite young, but yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah. So what? I guess what would you say is like you like? Do you remember being saved, or is that like your parents think you were saved and you don't even remember it? Or
I don't remember a definite experience like that. Like I don't remember what I was like before I was saved.
yeah.
But
Has that affected you any in your adult or teens? Like, did you have the
Not-
experience that people have where it's like, was I ever actually saved?
yeah, I mean, not really that, but just like not having a real testimony that I could share
Yeah.
has come up a couple times. But yeah, I guess personally, it's not been a huge problem for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, like here at New Life, we pray that our children would be saved early and clearly.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, there's something to say about having like this testimony of, oh, I was doing all this terrible stuff and God totally turned my life around. But like, there's also something to say about like, God has been, working in my life throughout the entire thing, and it's like amazing the work that He can do over that time.
Yeah.
And yeah. So as a kid, what was, because like obviously, your parents shared the gospel with you, and they had you doing these Bible memory verses. What was your relationship with God like?
We would do so outside of Bible memory. We would do like just a quiet time, usually in the morning, where we would just read the Bible and journal and pray. But there wasn't a lot of, I guess, outside interaction. So it was kind of just share a verse that stood out to you with the parents at some point, and yeah. We would typically sit in church for the sermons as well. And so there was some of that, but also we would mostly just draw and graph paper. And
Like your church didn't have childcare, or your parents deliberately?
well, we were going to New
intentionally
Life at that
chose?
point, and
Okay.
they chose to keep us in the service.
Do you know why?
I don't know for sure all the reasons, but I think part of it was just not wanting to be in a mixed gender situation with minimal supervision. But yeah.
Because I've thought about like me and Josh having Gwen in the service with us, just so we can like worship God together. Because we do the worship songs, and so we can get taught the word of God together, and like she can see that we're serious and we're listening, and then I feel like she'll learn lots of words. Like she can't understand, but she'll learn, she'll hear,
Sure.
she'll see that we respect God and His word. But also she like is a baby. So it's kind of like finding that balance. I honestly don't. We have her in childcare right now, but I'm like, I don't know. Is that the best thing for us? So I was just wondering if you knew why your parents did it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, at this point, I don't think I really missed out on anything.
Right.
It probably hindered, forming friendships a little bit.
Yeah.
Like I would hang out with the New Life kids my age, but I wouldn't like seek out building a friendship or interacting outside of church. And so at the time, it didn't really bother me. At this point, I don't know that it drastically changed my life.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving forward in time a little bit, you said that your parents moved to the farm that they're living at now.
Yeah.
When you were around like 15, did you say?
I think we started building the house when I was 14 or 15.
Okay.
And then we moved into we built a barn first, and we moved in there while we worked on the house.
Yeah, you're probably the only person I know who grew up in a barn.
Yes.
But it's a very nice barn.
Yes, it's insulated and heated and everything. But yeah, so I did a lot of work with my dad on that. So basically, we would homeschool year round, but like during those years, basically whenever it was warm enough to be outside, 100% of my homeschool work was building trades.
What was that like for you? Did it come naturally?
It was a lot of learning experiences. Starting out not especially helpful, but becoming indispensable toward the end of it.
Yeah, that's interesting to me because I kind of want to, at some point in my future, teach my children my trade of, remodeling and construction, and I just have no idea how that's gonna go because I feel like that's something that's not really done in our culture, at all.
Yeah.
So when you were helping your dad, and like you weren't very helpful, what switched to you becoming like indispensable? Was it just time, or?
I asked a lot of questions, and
Yeah.
he was patiently answering my questions. And then just practice at various skills and things like that.
How did you feel when you weren't very helpful?
I don't know. Like I was happy to be there. I was happy to be working with him. At that point in my maturity level, not being useful didn't bother me. It was fun to pound nails in with a hammer, even if 2 out of 3 hits hit the board instead of the nail. But
Well, it was probably good having that bonding time with your dad.
absolutely,
Away from the other siblings.
absolutely, it was good. And then as Daniel got older, he joined as well. But yeah, starting with a project like that from bare dirt and going to a finished livable dwelling, there's a lot that goes into that, and a lot of different skills that I picked up along the way. I don't know if I'd be able to do that myself at this point, but I can definitely make myself useful.
Yeah. If you had to, anybody can do anything if they have to.
Yeah, for sure.
So you mentioned that Daniel was your best friend growing up, and he's still your best friend. What what kind of a friendship do you guys have? What kind of things do you connect on?
We talk a lot about Magic the Gathering. That's I guess it's not fairly recent. It's from college, which was like 8 years ago. But yeah, that's kind of the latest thing. But also just connecting about nerdy stuff, video games. I don't know.
Do you guys connect on an emotional level?
It's funny that you would ask that.
Yeah.
There's not a lot that really, like deeply moves me, or him for that matter. And so there's not a lot of opportunity for that.
Do you seek out opportunity though to like connect on an emotional? What does that even look like for you? Like if you're connecting on an emotional level
What does it
with
look
someone?
like for me when I'm connecting on an emotional level? I guess I can talk about Megan a little bit.
Okay.
It's difficult because I'm in a position where I can see that you're hurting, and I wish I could make it better, and I feel like I'm not equipped to do that, because if it was me, I would just stop hurting. And I can't do that for you, and I can't tell you how to do that, and it's frustrating. Yeah, I don't know.
What aspect of it is frustrating, that like you can't connect, or that the other person can't just fix themselves?
What's frustrating is that she keeps suffering.
Yeah.
And I can't do anything about it. And I mean, there's times when it's like a good emotion as well, where she's like excited about something, and I'm trying to be excited with her, and that's a little bit easier to, like force myself to be excited. Not because it's not interesting, but just because when I'm interested in something, it doesn't come out expressively all the time. And so I'm trying to show her that I'm interested in the thing that she's interested in.
So when somebody's hurting, do you like feel that hurt or just frustration?
No, I feel the hurt.
Okay.
The frustration is from the solution I would use in myself doesn't work.
Well, and so like just deciding. So do you just decide to not hurt? Like this is a hard thing. I'm just gonna not.
I'll talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
A lot of people I've heard use the analogy of stuffing down your feelings until they blow up.
Yeah.
It's not that way with me. It's more like an airlock that I just open up and it goes away, and I close the airlock and I never see it again. And I think to a certain extent that's not entirely healthy.
Right.
It solves the immediate problem, but it makes it hard to relate to people.
So does it ever? So it never comes back. Like, can you think of a time where you airlocked an emotion away and it came back, or does it just not come back ever?
If like to use the piece, like the PC analogy, I am occasionally triggered by something, multiple times.
Yeah.
Like if the circumstance comes back, I might be triggered by it again. But I don't know. I don't usually dwell on the negative aspects of my past. And so, yeah, it's not.
Do you dwell on the positive aspects of your past?
Yes. And occasionally that comes with like I don't know, like sorrow at lost joys. That, it was a happier time then or whatever, for whatever reason. But it's, I don't know. Yeah. I sometimes go over like something that happened that day, but anything beyond that, I normally just don't think about it at all.
Yeah. I'm pretty similar, that I hardly ever think about the past. It's mostly I try to think about the present. But
I think about the past a lot. It'll be like the littlest thing, the recent thing. So we're working on our Josh is working on our patio. And we decide, so we had a patio there before, it was brick, and so we had some leftover bricks, and we like don't want to spend a ton of money, so we were like, okay, well, let's just use the bricks. We just need a few more. We put down the patio, and it's looking very rustic, not really my style, but I'm happy with it. And we're figuring out a different home project, and I'm having like indecision, like I can't make a decision about it, and I'm getting very emotional about like making this decision. I don't know why. And we talk about it. It's because in the past, our home projects don't work out. They end up being very expensive, and we don't all the way like it.
Yeah.
And so Josh, he was like talking about something. He goes, I think if we just poured concrete, you probably would have liked it better. And now I'm like, we should have like done that. And I could not move on. And I started thinking about all the mistakes we've made in our past. And then I could not move on. So, do you ever do that? Probably not.
Like if there's a situation where I have a regret.
Yeah, regret.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it definitely hurts in the moment, but it doesn't stick with me. For very long. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I don't know. Mostly I would just move on and think like, how can I make the best of it at this point, sort of thing.
Yeah. So to kind of bridge this back to your late childhood years, what would you say was one of the hardest things that you went through as a kid? Or like 0 to 18?
Probably being born.
Being born.
I
That was probably
I don't know. Maybe when my cat died.
Your cat?
Yeah.
Did you have a special relationship with the cat?
Yeah. So we had a cat named Cosmo that I think the Reinerts found in a park that we're trying to get rid of, and we ended up taking. But she was the progenitor of a long lineage of kittens.
Are some of those kittens still on the Weineth farm? Or
No, I don't think we have any of those left.
okay.
We do have cats on the farm, or my parents have cats on the farm, but I don't think it's any of the original generations. But yeah, so it was a Sunday, I believe. We were living with the Howingtons because we had sold the house in Newhall and we hadn't yet moved into the barn. So we lived with the Howingtons for about, 6 months or so. But so we were going to church and I saw, like we were just driving by and it looked like some kind of animal in the ditch. And my brain was like, that could have been a cat. That could have been my cat. And I was just kind of in the back of my mind, while we were at church and everything. And we got back and I went and checked and it was. And I was sad. But I wasn't like expressive. Like I wasn't crying. I wasn't like, I don't know. I wanted to basically distance myself from the world and not like experience it fully. So I think I went and told somebody. But then I basically tried to ignore it. And it was, I don't know. I don't know if it would have been better for me to have been sad at the moment. And it definitely came up, over that next couple of days or a week or something where I would think about it again and be sad again. But it wasn't like devastating to me or anything.
Isn't that like the first stage of grief is denial?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think you denied it or just ignored it? That seems different.
Yeah, because I don't think I denied that it happened.
Right.
Like even after like that first glance as we were driving by, I wasn't like, no, that couldn't possibly have been my cat.
Right.
Whatever. I was like, I wonder. Maybe, maybe, maybe not. And so there's kind of that, like trying to hold both realities as you don't know which is which, without like, I don't know. And even when I'm trying to withdraw, I'm not really denying the fact of of what happened.
You just maybe
I'm distracting myself.
Yeah. Or denying the effect that it has on yourself, possibly.
Sure. Yeah. And I don't know. Maybe it wasn't like that big of a deal because we did have other cats at that point.
Yeah.
And
Oh, it's a big deal losing a cat.
yes.
Jerra had to eat some in Africa.
And it still is with me to this day.
Yes. But yeah, I was very close with our cats. I have incorporated their aspects of their personality into myself.
Yeah, I guess, do you feel a kindred relationship with the cats where
Absolutely.
you're kind of a cat?
I am definitely more a cat person than a dog person.
Yeah.
Dogs are pushy and annoying. Cats will be quiet and
Leave you alone and come when they need something and go.
yes,
I
but
really
they do it more or less politely.
Yeah.
Yes.
And,
Megan would disagree about our cats and how polite they are.
well, also cats sit up high and watch things, and that's kind of what you
That's
do.
true. That's
Just
true.
naturally, because you sit up high.
Yes.
Higher than most people, anyways.
So you would disagree, like, would you say you don't have feelings? You would say you have feelings.
I have feelings, but I tend to process them quickly, and I tend to not express them outwardly very much.
Or you tend to lock them away. So, like, you don't process them.
Airlock them.
Airlock them.
Yeah, but yeah, by process, I mean get to a point where it's not affecting me.
Yeah.
Okay. See, that's not processing, Ben.
Well, I mean, you don't know, Jared. Don't judge.
I'm not judging. I'm just saying.
You're not in his head.
I'm not. But it doesn't. The things you said so far does not sound like processing to me. That's why I'm just asking.
Okay. Well, yeah. So something I wanted to get to. So you're a fairly intellectual, logical person. What kind of, as like a teenager going into college, what kind of intellectual pursuits really gripped you and were you really interested in?
So robotics was a big one, both the building and the programming. So we did a Lego robotics program early in high school. And then later we were in a different, like a robot wrestling competition plus some other stuff. But it was something I was good at, that I enjoyed. I was more interested in the building aspect of it, but my comparative advantage was in programming. I don't know if I was a better programmer than a builder, but I was a better programmer than the rest of the team was.
How like in your professional opinion, having Lego robot experience, how likely is it in the next 10 years that we either A, have AI overlords, or B, have robot servants?
I think AI overlords is more likely than robot servants.
That's depressing.
And honestly, the pace at which AI has developed in the last like year is pretty insane.
Yeah.
A lot of people think of like when it first came out and it wasn't very good, and that's their opinion of AI from here going forward. But it's a lot better than it was. And they're training bigger models yet. So it's something that I could see it very quickly changing a lot of things about the way we live our life. And I think that's part of why I am open to the idea of a very near-term end times.
Oh, really?
Because if Jesus doesn't come back in the next 10 years, I don't know what this world's going to look like.
That's crazy.
That is crazy. Yeah, I've heard people talk about like the like human beings are not equipped to understand exponential growth in things. And that's what AI is currently doing, is it's exponentially growing. And like you said, like a lot of people treat anything, like you were talking about cats, we treat anything as another human being. Like even if it's not a human being at all. And your first impression of somebody is like so important, even if it's like absolutely untrue. And that is an interesting point to make, is that like people's first impression of AI is just like being left in the dust by what it actually is.
Yeah.
Well, when you Google stuff and it gives the AI overview, that still sucks.
Wow.
And recently, I tried to get ChatGPT to come up with a slogan for me for my business, and it didn't come up with anything new. And I was like, this is not good.
Yeah,
but
so-
it's probably just the stuff that people have access to.
Right. There are some
terrible.
some of the newer stuff, either you have to pay for access to it, or it's like a limited application to get access to it. And then there's stuff that like Google would use internally that they might not even have released yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually had an experience with AI today where the AI search thing that they've started putting at the top was actually much more helpful than all the rest of the articles. So some people might know the name. I think his name is James Earl Jones.
Yes, he died recently.
Yeah, the Darth Vader voice actor died recently, and I knew in the back of my head I was like, voice actor for Darth Vader. Oh yeah, there was someone else in the suit, and so I typed in like who was in the Darth Vader suit, and like all the articles were like 10 things you didn't know about Darth Vader, and like 15 things about Darth Vader's suit that will disgust you, and it's like they were not helpful at all. And then at the very top with the AI thing, it was like the guy's name from Wikipedia.
Yes. Yeah. Google search has gotten worse.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether that's because there's so much slop on the internet now, or whether the actual algorithm is worse.
Well, is it that people click on the slop more?
I mean, that's part of it.
And then
It's profitable to somebody to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one way that I've heard AI described is that it's going to make computers act more like human beings in interfacing with human beings. And so it's kind of like
That's the hope. Yes.
The reality is AI overlords that will enslave us or just kill us or something. But I look forward to that because
You look forward to being enslaved.
not being enslaved. I look forward to being able to interface with computers more easily because I personally, even though I'm supposed to be in the generation that knows all the tech stuff, I struggle with computers because like I think because I want them to understand me and like act like a person and they don't.
Yeah.
That's a weird desire.
Well,
It's not going to be helpful for us when they take
we
over.
want dogs and cats to act like people.
You want Jarvis.
Yeah, I want Jarvis from the Avengers. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a possible product that could be developed.
You sound like you have secret knowledge about that.
No.
So you do, okay.
So they're trying to do that. I mean, like even far back as like Cortana in Microsoft was trying to do that. Siri is trying to do that. I don't think it's at the point yet where it's like the useful assistant. Partly because when it's 99% reliable, you still have to check it every time because it'll be wrong.
Yes. So what kinds of things do you see actually useful in people's everyday lives with AI?
Personally, I basically never use AI.
Yeah.
Which might be surprising considering how like techie I am. But most of the time I would rather just look it up in Wikipedia or write the code myself.
Yeah.
But if it was good enough, education would be a huge application of it. Like everybody's talking about how students are cheating on their exams, but also you can just ask a question and get the answer to whatever question you want.
Yeah.
And so like, what are we really learning then?
Well, the teachers used to cheat with Google. I used to find like whole homework sheets just by Googling, like all the answers, all of the sheets they were using. So it wasn't that hard back then either.
Right. And so, yeah, there's definitely, I mean, you need to know life skills, but like, I don't know. Now that we all have calculators on our phones, we don't really use a memorization of a mathematician, like a times table or anything.
So people are just getting dumber, but more capable.
Sure.
We're evolving.
You have specialized skill sets for interfacing with a specialized technology.
Yeah.
That might not transfer well outside of that.
Yeah.
So does it concern you, like the growth of AI and people using computers and technology? Does it concern you for your kids, like their safety? Gwen loves Google Home. She's like always yelling, "Hey Google," or "Hey Google." And when she climbs the stairs, we have smoke alarms. She likes to stop on the stairs and goes, "Google." And in the car she goes, "Google, stop." And it's like,
Yeah.
it's starting.
So we don't have any like Google Home or anything in our house. Megan's parents have Alexa, and the kids will use it to play music, and that's about it. And so I don't know when we're gonna let them on the internet. It's gonna be a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not. I guess for my kids personally, I'm not super concerned.
Well, if everything's becoming more convincing and they're becoming more human-like and like can do things, and kids believe things very easily. They think everything's true. That seems just so concerning for me. If they get on the internet, they'll just.
It's definitely a danger.
Yeah.
To be guarded against. And then as for like a society thing, maybe I'm concerned in that level.
Yeah.
Of like what the next generation is going to be like.
Terrible.
Well, I mean, that's a given. But yeah, it's exciting. It's a little bit concerning. I don't think about it very much. But,
So you're interested in robotics in like your teenage years and doing this robotics program. Going into college, did you think about going into college for robotics, or what did you go to college for?
I thought about it. I applied to a few different schools, and then one of them I think was in Wisconsin, for a robotics program. I ended up getting a full ride scholarship to Oklahoma Christian, and partly because of that, and partly because it's in Oklahoma, which is a much better climate than Wisconsin in the winter.
In the winter, yeah.
That was where I ended up going. So I did a basic mechanical engineering degree, not really specializing in anything. And then coming out of that, I was looking for robotics jobs, but I knew I wanted to be in Cedar Rapids at New Life, and so like I didn't see a lot of that opportunity here. And so I was looking around at different engineering positions. And I think it was my dad pointed me toward metal design systems. But yeah, it was something that I didn't like realize was out there, and I didn't like realize how perfect of a fit it would be for me. I did a lot of doodling on graph paper, drawing pictures of castles and cars and lightsabers and stuff, and then house plans as well.
Yeah.
And so like looking back, it makes sense. But it wasn't on my radar at the time.
And so we were talking about this earlier, but just for the audience, what exactly do you do for work?
Yeah. So I work at Metal Design Systems. They're a panel fabricator. They make architectural metal panels like you'd see on a car dealership or another sort of basically modern aesthetic building. And so I do 3D modeling of that. We get basically a point cloud from a laser scan of the building, and then I have to figure out where the actual substrate is and what our panel system has to be.
Use a lot of big words there, Ben. Point cloud and substrate? I don't know.
So there's a laser that spins around vertically while the whole thing turns slowly horizontally.
Okay.
And so it gets a lot of distance measurements from the center point out to various objects. And we do a bunch of these around the building to get a bunch of points in space, basically, in a model. And then I have to draw, flat planes for walls and everything.
So it's a little scanner that scans the building.
Yeah.
And then tells you what it looks like.
Yes.
In numbers and math.
Yes, in numbers and math. And I have to convert the numbers and math into different numbers and math.
And then into pictures?
A little bit of pictures, because there's some back and forth. The architect will draw a pretty picture, and we will send them back. Here's how we can make that happen, or here's the closest to that we can make happen. And we get approval on that, and then they actually build the building, and it's completely different from what they said they were going to build. and none of the walls are straight.
Yep.
And so we have to modify our version of it to fit that building, because the panel systems themselves are very rigid, and you can't really make it fit if it doesn't fit. And so basically we have to have a custom fit for every job. And then we send them a final approval, a final set for approval back of here's what we're going to provide for you, and they'll sign off on it, and then it goes to fabrication.
Yeah. So earlier you said that growing up, you were very close with your family, and it was kind of like an insular effect. Like you didn't have a lot of friends outside. So going to college in Oklahoma, and I'm assuming none of your family followed you, or?
Daniel went to school there for a couple of years after I'd already been there for a couple of years.
After you'd already been there. Okay, so starting college, was that the first time that you were away from your family, off on your own?
There had been a couple of times we went to a Teen Pact conference where they were like a government program.
Yeah.
Where I was there by myself. I was there with Laura, but I was in the boys' dorm and she was in the girls' dorm.
But that was was that like a week-long thing, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this will be the first extended duration.
And how was that?
It was interesting. There was a lot of it was, find a groove and stick with the groove, and I don't know. I probably could have expanded my horizons more earlier, and find stuff. Like there was a frisbee group that I really enjoyed that I didn't find out about until my second year there, because I happened to not be at the club day event because I hadn't heard about it, or I had forgotten when it was. But yeah, it was, I don't know. I was pretty, I don't know, isolated, I guess, before going to college. And so, yeah, it wasn't too much of a problem for me.
So did you then get there and isolate yourself, or did you just kind of?
I wasn't intentionally isolating myself.
Yeah.
I just wasn't putting myself out there to interact with people.
I feel like it'd be hard to even know how to do that.
Yeah.
How do you? I don't know.
Yeah, and my first year there, I didn't even have texting on my phone.
Oh.
And so, I basically didn't communicate with anyone other than in person.
That's good. What we need now.
Right. And so, yeah, a lot of it was I was in the honors dorm. And so it was a lot of predicting when are they going to go to dinner, so when should I come out of my room? But
Did you find it easy to make friends there?
I was very quiet. So I would hang out with the group of friends, but I wasn't really connecting with any of them on an individual level.
I heard a rumor that you joined show choir. Was that in college?
Yeah, so the college had, fraternities and sororities, sort of, because it was a Christian college, they wouldn't completely go that way. But each club would do a production, they called it Spring Sing. So it was every club has a group that does a show. And so I did that for 3 years, kind of on a whim of, they announced that, hey, this is the thing that we're doing, you should do it. And I was like, okay, sure, sounds fun.
Was that like anything you'd done? Show choir seems like a big step from robotics.
Yeah, absolutely. I had done piano in high school. And I'd done piano recitals. But beyond that, I hadn't really performed in person in front of people. But yeah, it was helpful that it was all heavily rehearsed, and I knew what I had to be doing, and I could just be in the zone of what I needed to do. It wasn't spontaneous. That would be much more difficult for me.
Yeah. Do you enjoy that experience of being in front of people doing a rehearsed thing?
Yeah, it was fun. And it got me closer to a lot of the guys in the club, just from hanging out practicing with them all the time. And so I think it was a very good thing for me. But I don't know. It wasn't. Yeah.
What's the craziest thing you did in college? You probably had like a huge rebellious streak, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not really.
Yeah.
I was not. I mean, I am a rule breaker, but only if I have a good reason, and I never had a good reason. Yeah, I don't know.
That reminds me of something my dad says often, which is stupid rules are meant to be broken. Which I can kind of agree with that, but sometimes that gets you into trouble when you think the rule's dumb and someone else doesn't.
Yeah. And sometimes the rule itself isn't dumb. It's just we need this rule for society to function, because if everyone breaks it, we have a problem.
Yeah.
But if I break it and I know what I'm doing and we don't have a problem, we don't have a problem.
Yes. Yep.
Do you get annoyed when other people break the rule? Like, I'll break a rule and feel like it's fine, but if everybody else or somebody else did it, I'd be kind of...
Megan is a lot more that way, where she'll be upset.
Yeah.
There was to tell a story about that. There was a time we were in the Corps and we were meeting someone at Kirkwood on a Saturday. And so no one was there. And we were meeting in this big empty parking lot. And I was driving her car for some reason. And I parked like diagonally across 4 different parking spots on purpose. And she was like super upset about it and would not let me get out of the car until I fixed it.
You know, I think my wife would be the same way. She would make me fix it too. But I would probably do that as well. That's fun. Yeah, that's your rebellious streak, is doing weird things.
Parking.
Yeah, doing weird things, but also just, thinking about, why is this rule here and can I get away with breaking it? Not in the sense of like, will anybody find out about it, but like, will it actually hurt anybody?
Yeah.
If I break this rule.
Interesting. So when we were talking about the colors earlier, like our first question.
Yeah.
You said that you felt like you went from subdued colors to brighter colors, and you kind of mentioned like, was it? I forget if you said confidence, I guess. Do you feel like that was during that experience of being away from your family at college that happened, or was that a later thing?
Yeah, I definitely built over the course of like those 4 years of college.
Mm-hmm.
I remember like arriving to college with my dad on day one, and I had all my stuff in my car, and all my clothes were on a PVC pipe in the back of my car. And I looked at it, and it was all blue and gray, like dark blue, like navy blue and gray. And I made a note of that because I hadn't noticed that before.
That's interesting. Getting a little bit of perspective on yourself.
Yeah. But yeah, it was. Yeah, just over that process of being by myself and doing things for myself, and realizing that I had to put myself out there a little bit more if I was going to interact with people and make friends and and grow in that way. Yeah.
Do you think you're like really in your head kind of a person, or like experiencing the world kind of person? Because I wonder like why you hadn't like realized about your clothes.
I'm pretty in my head. I notice things around the world, like in the world, but I'm not there for the experience, really, I guess.
Yeah. So, going through college, getting like a new perspective on your life, I do think that's like really important for some people. Like in my mind, I tend to romanticize some things and in the past, and like the way society used to be is there was no going off to college. It was, you're gonna grow up and you're gonna keep working on the family farm, or in some societies, and like, but there is something that I think can, and obviously people had those experiences going off to war or just traveling, of experiences of like, this is so different from what I'm used to, and it just gives so much perspective on your own life that you've been living.
Yeah.
You get a lot of that when you get married.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, in college though too, just the experience of being at college is a new experience for me, but also just learning a lot about other people's experiences and how they grew up, and then the course material and stuff just opens you up to a lot of different things as well.
Yeah. What were some of your favorite classes?
So, I mean, I had all the engineering classes that were like fun-ish in the sense that it was something that I resonated with. But we did all in the honors program, all of the normal like gen eds got replaced with honors core, which is like basically you're there with the other honors students in a little bit smaller class size, and then the material's presented a little bit differently. I guess it's a little bit more like thought provoking and in that way. And so the Western thought 1 and 2 was basically the history class that would go over, art and literature and all that, where it was very like discussion oriented and just talking about like why did this civilization do things this way versus this other way, and then moving into like Renaissance and beyond that, it was very difficult because it was like a stretch for me, both in a way like I'm not good at writing, I'm not good at the social sciences aspect of it, but it was also a very like a bonding experience for the honors group because it's so hard. We're kind of all in this together trying to get through it. And so we would do like study groups on like before a test or something. And, just basically a way to force me to interact with other humans. It turned out to be very good for me, and I look back on it fondly.
What kinds of things intrigued you about Western like thought?
I don't know that it was particularly the subject matter, but just like the way it was presented and the structure of the class. And partly that's just because they didn't have time to cover, all of human experience. That's the amount of time. They had to pare down a little bit.
Yeah.
So you went to college and you did the classes and you did show choir. And then you came back to Iowa and you wanted to come to New Life, and then you met Megan. So how did that happen?
Well, I did want to ask, why did you feel like you wanted to come back to Cedar Rapids and you wanted to come back to New Life?
Partly it was just I knew a lot of the people here, and I didn't want to have to make entirely new friends all over.
That is annoying to make new friends.
Yeah.
You already went through 4 years of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I knew how good of a church New Life was, and I didn't want to have to look for something else.
Yeah.
So before you go to the Megan, because I'm very interested in that, so your parents don't go here anymore, and Sarah doesn't go here, and Laura doesn't. So it's just you and Daniel.
Yeah.
So have you stayed here for the same reasons that you had when you wanted to come back, or
yeah, I think
you
so.
have different reasons? Okay.
I think my parents mainly just because of how far away it is from where they live.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure all of. I think Sarah just because Matt was going to a different church to begin with.
Yeah, Matt came and stole Sarah.
Yeah.
It's basically what happened.
I still see her from time to time though, so I forgive them.
Well, I mean, I see her occasionally too, but
yeah,
it's less frequent, I'm sure.
But yeah.
Okay, so then just tell us how you met and like that time of your life.
Yeah.
And how exciting and bright colored it was.
Yes, absolutely. So I got back to Cedar Rapids. I started living with my parents again. I guess back in high school, before I went to college, there was a guy's house that I would go over to occasionally we would watch a movie or something. And so that is something that was on my radar. And when I got back and started going to the core meetings, I don't know if it was Peter Moore or someone else who suggested that I should move into the guy's house. But yeah, pretty quickly I took him up on that. And it was a good experience getting to know everyone there, and happened to be right next door to the girls' house. And I think of those groups, more than half of the residents of those two houses ended up getting married to each other.
Yeah.
So it's written in stars.
Jaden and Leah and Ben and Amy and
The Youthers? Was Matt in your house?
He was not
No.
He'd moved out by the time I got there.
Okay.
I think Justin and Jenna. I guess I don't know if Jenna was lived in the girls' house or not.
I don't know.
I can't remember.
Yeah, they were in the core though before I got there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so we were living next door, and it wasn't initially on my radar.
Mm-hmm.
But we would just go to the Tuesday night meetings or whatever, and do service projects together and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And just interacting with her and doing leaf raking and all that, going to faith walkers and talking about what she's learning, what I'm learning,
Mm-hmm.
and in like a group setting.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was during a leaf raking, like I don't know, we'd raise money for faith walkers raking leaves for a few weeks leading up to, and I think it was during one of those times that I started to take notice of her.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
Well, what made you take notice of her? Just like how good she rakes leaves? You're like, I want this lady to...
I mean, it was her, like she was a hard worker,
Mm-hmm.
and she was like cheerful and encouraging and funny.
Mm-hmm.
She is funny.
Yes. And so that was very attractive to me. And then she was also the organizer of a lot of the events that we were doing, and that's something that I'm very bad at. And so I noticed that as a possible complementary skill.
Yeah.
But yeah, we started talking more, and there was one time where we were at my parents' house. I think she was staying with my parents because the girls' house had closed.
Mm-hmm.
And like I was there, we were like doing lunch after church or something. And my parents like noticed that there was something between us and talked to me about it. And we basically came to the conclusion that I wasn't ready to pursue a relationship quite yet. And so I should, like, if she's still like showing me special attention, I should say something and ask her to back off while I think about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think like she independently of that decided on her own that she was showing me too much attention and decided to back off. And so then there was a section where it was just kind of studying each other quietly.
Like a cat.
Like a cat, yes. Yes. And then I don't know how much longer it was than that. Probably wasn't too much longer, a couple weeks maybe, where I had another conversation with my parents and decided that I really did want to move forward with this. And so we spent, I don't know how long we spent composing the text message that I was going to send her.
Yeah.
And
So your parents helped you text
yes.
Megan.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Composed.
And
This is how you get a girl, Ben.
And so, yeah, I basically wanted to arrange a meeting with her in person so that I could ask her out.
Mm-hmm.
But the wording that I used in the text was that I have some concerns about the way we've been interacting.
So you and your parents decided
And
that was
we
the
decided
best.
that was the best way
Oh
to
my
word it.
gosh, okay.
And Megan, of course, interpreted that as he's going to tell me that he doesn't want to be like in a relationship with me.
Yeah.
And so she was freaking out. We met at, I think, a Panera or something. And so then I completely blindsided her with, I do like you and I want to be in a relationship with you.
Well, she has told me, she was like, she got dressed and she was going there to like, when you tell her, you know, you don't like her, she was going to be like, okay, like she was going to make a scene, like do this whole thing, and was very, very surprised when that's not what you were saying.
Yeah. And so, yeah, so then from there, I think spent another week kind of like independently deciding how we would want this relationship to look so that we could then come together and discuss and have, boundaries and a plan moving forward. Mm-hmm. Because like even from that point, we were like, this is either going to go to marriage or it's going to go to a breakup, and we should figure out as quickly as possible which of those it's going to be. And so, yeah, it was we were dating for about 7 months, and then we were engaged for about 7 weeks. And
That's pretty short.
it was too long.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, but it was a lot of fun. It was a wild ride.
So would you say that time of your life was the most alive you've ever felt? Well, just emotion-wise.
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, like your world was probably colored, Megan, like colored and bright, and there was a lot of emotion.
Yeah, I was very busy with Core, and busy with dating Megan. And,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exciting.
Yeah.
So I do think it's interesting that the old proverb opposites attract is like maybe in its extreme form in you and Megan's relationship.
Yes, we have a lot of polar opposites. We have a few similarities. We're both pretty nerdy. We both like that sort of stuff. But it's it's a lot of differences.
And did you guys realize that when you were like deciding things?
Yeah, we did a lot of like getting to know you type questions. We would we had a big bucket of like slips of paper, and so we would pull one out I don't know if it was every day. I think it might have been every day. So like we'd pull one out in the morning, and I'd text it to her or whatever, and then we'd come up with our response over the course of the day, and then meet in the evening and discuss. Why'd you answer it this way?
Was she still living in your parents' house at this point?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awkward.
Well, yes. Well, she was living in a RV trailer.
Oh, okay.
On their property. But
you weren't living there.
no, I was still living in the guy's house.
Oh, okay, so I guess that's not.
So
awkward.
so after work, I would drive out to the farm and we would talk.
Okay.
We were dating for some of the time when she was still living in the girl's house.
Huh.
So I'm not remembering all the timeline there.
I'm sure she'll set you straight when you get home.
Yeah.
So, like personally, what has it been like? Those polar opposites that the two of you have. What has it been like trying to bridge the gap there and learn to live in harmony and whatnot?
It's been difficult.
I guess communicate effectively. That's a big
That's
one.
a big one. Saying words that mean to Megan what I'm trying to make them mean.
Like I have some
a-
concerns about our relationship.
It's a learned skill that I'm still learning. And one of the big things that we're opposites on is love languages. So my love language is actually touch, and I didn't realize this until we were dating, because I had never been in a physical relationship before, and I had never I would be affectionate with my parents, but I didn't make that connection that's just the way that I show affection. And so, and then her love language is words. And I'm very much not a wordy person.
You probably said more words today than in the last month. Maybe.
Maybe than I've said in some months, but probably not this month.
Yeah, probably, okay, not this month.
But it's a challenge for both of us, and learning to bend out of my normal comfort zone to love her in the way that she wants to be loved is a challenge. And it's something that is a constant struggle for me because it's not my natural inclination. And so if I'm not on top of it, I will slip back into, I'll say nothing to her and she'll say nothing to me and we're all fine. Because there's not a problem. And then we have a problem. And so, yeah, it's a lot of learning about each other and practicing. Hopefully I will continue to get better at it as we continue to be married.
Yep.
But it's a struggle.
Yeah, I feel like Elena and I have some of that, but it's interesting because I've usually been the more emotional one than her. And so that's kind of a dynamic that's a little flipped, though. I think her being married to me has made her more emotional. I don't know if me being married to her has made me less emotional, though. I don't think that's the case. So, I don't know. It is an interesting dynamic in a relationship to have to, like, realize, oh, something that I say might mean something completely different to this other person. And, like, that's true in marriage, but it's just true in, like, life in general.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to be inside someone else's head.
Have you found that you've become more emotional since being married to Megan? Like you used to say? Or have you been able to feign emotions more?
That one.
Okay.
I'm not entirely feigning emotion, but feigning the outward response.
Okay.
Expression of it.
That's so...
How would a typical human respond in this situation?
Ben is the alien cat from... Oh, what movie is it?
Alien.
Yeah, it's like a Marvel movie. It's like it's an alien, but it's in a cat, and it like has tentacles come out of it. You know what I'm talking about? Oh my gosh. I feel like we're going to leave here.
Well, what you made me think of is there's this comic... Have you seen this comic strip? I think it's called Strange World. My wife really likes it, but it's like basically this guy draws these little aliens in this comic strip, and they basically just do normal human things, but it's described in a weird alien way.
Yeah.
Like an alien kid has a birthday, and it's like, you had your 7th trip around the sun or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
You feel like an alien in the world pretending to be a human?
At least in the realm of emotions, yes.
Yeah.
Fair.
Sometimes I feel like everyone else is weird and alien.
Yeah. You're the next generation of human. You've evolved.
Yeah.
And we just haven't caught up yet.
My superpower is that I have no feeling of emotion.
Yes, or no. Oh, did you have something? Okay. There's this guy. His name is David Wood. I'm not calling you a psychopath, but he's a psychopath. And he, like, when he was growing up, he noticed, like, he actually had no feelings about things. Like, he wasn't locking them away or anything. He just didn't experience it. And that was the conclusion he came to, was that he was above everyone else. Like, he's just the next level of humans. And so that led him to, like, commit crimes. Because he was like, why do these people matter when they haven't evolved yet? And it also led him to, like, trying to kill his parents. Then he got saved. And, like, he's doing amazing things for God because he doesn't care about anything.
That's super interesting.
Well, his mom died, and I think his brother or sister died in the same day. And he recorded a YouTube video, like, sharing the gospel with people, just walking away from where they just died. And he's just talking. And he said the first time in his life that he cried was when his best friend died, but he didn't cry because of that. He was talking to his best friend's parents. And as he said words, like, he just burst into tears. And then when he stopped talking to them, he would stop feeling the emotion. He's never, like, felt anything. And he just lives his life with, like, no true input of, like, an internal war of emotions. Because he doesn't have that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not sure what, like, physiologically would cause that sort of a condition. But a lot of things like that are, like, on a spectrum. And so I wouldn't be surprised if I'm like 5% psychopath.
But you never
Not
tried
enough to become a serial killer.
Did you ever try to kill your parents or?
No.
Okay. Not even just thinking about how you could do it, or.
No, not my parents. No.
Great. Okay. I'll keep on your good side then.
Most people are on my good side.
That's good. So something I wanted to get into a little bit more. We've been talking a lot about you, and we appreciate you doing that, because I'm sure that's a difficult thing for you, to talk about yourself. Because for me, it's like, people can probably remember from the podcast episode that I did that I can talk endlessly about myself.
Yeah.
But what are, like, things that you like talking about?
I don't know. When I'm with my brother, we talk about, like, Magic the Gathering or Star Wars or, board games, philosophical ideas.
That's
I don't know.
That's a good one.
Things like that.
What kind of philosophical ideas do you talk about? Do you guys talk about, like, evidences for God or like the nature of consciousness?
Sometimes things like that. I'm trying to remember. We do, like, once a month, we do, like, a meeting with all of the siblings and my parents. And we have lunch and everything. And usually some kind of conversation like that will come up. I'm trying to remember what we've done recently, though, and I'm blanking.
It'll come back to you.
Yeah.
Jared, this is the part where your eyes are allowed to gloss over, okay?
Well, I was going to bring it back to emotions, so don't worry about me.
Yeah, something that I really like thinking about is, like, the nature of consciousness. And I feel like this kind of relates to what we've been talking about, because it's like, not only can you not understand, like, that, like, someone else's experience of the world, but also you really have no proof that their experience of the world even exists.
Yeah.
Like, you have your experience of the world, and it's pretty much self-evident, and, like, philosophically, there's no real way to deny it. That's kind of like the Descartes' I think, therefore I am thing.
Yeah. And yeah, so I guess there's the idea that, like, you talk about your body and your soul, and, like, there's a separate thing from your material body that is what is conscious. And so you have, from that idea, there's the question of, like, what if there was somebody who had a material body and they had a brain that was thinking and making their mouth make words and everything, but they didn't actually have that experience of consciousness. Like, could you tell the difference? Like, what does that even mean? And so then on the other side, you have, like, the materialistic school of thought of, no, it is literally the neurons and the connections between the neurons and the brain waves and everything that embodies what it is to be conscious. And somehow all the non-conscious atoms that make you up assemble to create something that is conscious.
Yeah.
Purely through materialistic means.
Do you think that's a logical conclusion?
It has an appealing simplicity to it. And I mean, obviously there's something that is, you know, stored when we die that is re-embodied in a new body. But whether that's just, like, the information of the connections in our brains rather than some, like, immaterial soul, I'm not convinced one way or the other. But it wouldn't surprise me if it is just information.
Like, information in the physical, like, atoms, or?
Yeah, like if we were to scan your brain and had the technology to create a duplicate copy of you, like, there wouldn't really be a difference between the two. To say, like, one is the original you and one is the copy. I mean, materially speaking, we could say this atom was moved from the bin and put into the copy.
Yeah.
But the experience of the clone would be having the reconstructed memories of all of your past life. And other than being in the tube labeled clone rather than original.
Yeah, that is a really interesting thought experiment. I think, like, the really interesting thing about that thought experiment is it feels like science is, because it seems like science cares more about, like, if we can do something rather than, or, yeah, if we can do something rather than if we should do something. It seems like we're moving closer to, like, trying that as not just a thought experiment.
Yeah, and probably not in a physical body, but maybe creating a computer program that simulates your brain at a certain level of detail such that it can, you know, act in the way that your brain would act.
Yeah. And that does kind of go back to, I mean, what we were talking about with AI. Like, how do you, and kind of just with other people, like, how do you know that another person isn't just a robot? Like,
and so the materialistic perspective would be that you can't make a simulation of a brain that isn't conscious, because the connections and the patterns and the information that it takes to build it becomes conscious when it's assembled in that way. But
What is conscious?
that's a very good question.
it's a difficult question. So, yeah, I've tried to think quite a bit about, like, the materialist idea of, you know, if you just take a brain and you duplicate it, like, it'll just be conscious. And I feel like in my own thinking, like, there's a lot of flaws in that. Because I think it kind of takes for granted, like, humanity as like an outside observer that sees reality as it really is. And really, like, we see such a small slice, to me it seems like, we see such a small slice of what's really happening.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if, I guess, are you talking about, you think the Cartesian separation between body and soul assumes that sort of perfect information about reality? Or do you think the materialism does that?
Materialism. Like a belief that we can, like, we can obviously understand, like, how things work in the world. Like, very well through science. We probably lost most of our listeners by now, but that's okay.
Well, I was going to ask, are you guys talking about consciousness in that it's aware of itself existing?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of it.
Yeah, having experience. Having
experience or experiencing experience. Like, experiencing that it's experiencing.
Yeah, well, I think, so you're kind of pointing at, to me, like, what is at the base of it. Because, like...
Because how can you talk about any of this if we don't know what we're talking about?
Yeah, like, we have the experience of experience. And, like, I think our language kind of fails there because we don't actually know what we're talking about.
We don't. Gwen, apparently, I was looking it up. Children don't, like, realize themselves or are aware of their own bodies until they're 18 months. So is Gwen not conscious?
No, I think she's conscious because she's having experience.
But she's, like, not aware of any of it, really.
Well, she's aware of the experiences that she receives, and she puts that into whatever, categorization her brain has developed for. This is what it means to be warm or cold or hungry. But like the idea of yourself as a separate thing from the world with the body isn't, I don't know if I wouldn't say it's a necessary part of consciousness.
Yeah, because I mean, I would still call, like, animals conscious. Of course, people have different definitions of that. But anyways, what I was trying to say is, like, we can't really, like, logically prove that we have consciousness, that we have experience. It's just something that we can't ever deny. And so, like, with that as the basis of, like, our experience and our logical thought, like, obviously we can look at things in the world like a brain and say, like, well, this thing is complex and I think it could produce what I am experiencing. But then I feel like that shortcuts the fact that you don't even know, like, how or why you're experiencing what you're experiencing.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of it that we don't know. But then again, there was a time when we thought that the soul had an immaterial will that exerted its effort and that caused your body to move spontaneously because of your will. And we didn't know, like, what muscles were.
Well, that might still be true.
I experienced that just today. I wanted to go downstairs and clean my kitchen, but all of a sudden my body was in bed covered with a blanket and napping.
It's funny how that happens.
Well, see...
And so, yeah, so basically my point is every time we've looked into something like that, we found a materialistic explanation for it.
Yeah.
Like, we know how nerves work and how a muscle contracts when it gets the signal from a nerve. And,
like, I agree with that. I guess the thing that I've thought a lot about is, like, it's different. The English language is really bad at this point, and it kind of frustrates me. But what science does, in my opinion, is answer the how question. How does something work? And obviously, like, you have scientific laws and laws of nature, like how a thing works, and you're describing, like, what it does. And a lot of times people will say, like my arm moves because nerves fire in my brain and muscles move. but like there's a different why question of like
Why does it matter?
no, not why does it matter. It's more a question of why does my arm move when my neurons fire instead of something completely different? Like, why is it this way and not a different way? And for me, like, that comes back to the question of God existing. And to me, that's like a great proof that God does exist, is that things need that why. They need that purpose for existing, not just a how they exist. And so for me, it's like there's the how explanation of my neurons firing in my brain, but then there's the why explanation of I wanted to do that. And it's like a material view of the brain would seem to say there is no, like a material view of consciousness would seem to say there is no why answer to your to your actions. Have you considered that?
I guess speaking from the materialistic perspective, you could consider like the game of life, Conway's game of life, where like a grid of cells and there's certain rules that turn them on and off based on the nearby cells. And in this system, you can set up an initial pattern that creates a little glider that flies off by itself in a particular direction, or it repeats itself, or it expands chaotically, or expands in a particular ordered pattern, or does one thing and then when it receives an input from this other structure over here, turns into a different pattern and produces a different output. And so you can create like a computer inside of this system, and you could create a big enough computer that could simulate a brain. But it all has this deterministic rule behind it, where you could say, the reason the brain, like the person, whatever, the brain made this output is because the various submodules of the brain were oriented in whatever configuration they were in, because of their particular cells were in this orientation, and the rule says that whatever. So there's always a mechanistic explanation. At least in a deterministic universe, there's a mechanistic explanation. And so unless you're to posit that consciousness requires something random or non-deterministic, I think you have to say that a deterministic materialist brain, whatever, has that explanation. Within the language of materialism, you would say the I wanted to looks like this particular arrangement of cells being turned on. And we still don't know enough about consciousness to say why that feels like a desire.
So do you believe in free will?
That's a good question. There is something that we have that looks like free will, and we can call it free will. If you make a more specific question about could I have done something differently, it depends on, like, if all of the initial conditions were exactly the same, and my desires were the same and my resources were the same, I would make the same decision every time. And so is that not free because it's fixed based on the constraints? If you change the input, I might make a different output. But the same would be true of a computer.
Yeah, it is an interesting thought. Jonathan Edwards actually has like a lot of really good stuff on free will and like determinism. And an interesting point that he made is that like a lot of times people define free will as I have like options in front of me and I can choose between them based on what I think is best, and like I have a self-determining will.
But I can make a robot that does that.
Yeah. But Jonathan Edwards said like really human beings, like maybe more on an emotional level, feel like they have free will when they can do the thing they want to do. And really all that you ever decide to do is what you want to do. Mm-hmm. But you're not actually in control of what you want to do. In a lot of ways, that's determined by God. Mm-hmm. And when he created human nature. And so, like, a kind of a concrete example is, like, let's say you're working at your job and you're feeling tired that day and you're like, if it was up to me, I would go home at 3 o'clock rather than 4 o'clock or whatever. And it's like you feel like you don't have free will there because you're not doing the thing that you want to do, or like you try and go home and your boss stops you. That's like, I don't have free will. But
if you wanted to.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to, you still could. And so it's like, it's difficult to think about the question of what is free will, because we think it has to be one thing, but really on an emotional level, like, we feel like we have a free will when we just do whatever we want, when we can succeed in doing what we want to do.
Right. When our will is the sum of 100 charts of desires and whims and preferences. It's not like a unified singular thing.
Yeah.
I feel like when I have free will, when maybe I'll still do the one thing, but I like the options of doing other things. Like, maybe I'll never do those things. Mm-hmm. And if you only gave me the option to do the thing I want, then I would feel like I didn't have free will.
Yeah.
But if you gave me options to do other things.
There's interesting psychology stuff there too, where if you give somebody, pick one of these 2 options, they'll pick their favorite and be happy with it.
Yeah.
But if you say pick one of these 20 options, they'll be sad because of all the things they missed out on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Even if 2 of the like the original 2 options are one of the 2 that you gave them, and even if they picked the final one that they picked in the 2 option case, they're less happy with their decision.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's interesting. I really enjoy thinking about those kinds of things, and it's like a lot of people just have an aversion to try and think about things that way, like logically, and like trying to prove something from basic principles. But it is definitely something that I spend a fair amount of my time thinking about.
Well, not an aversion to it. Josh and I, when we had...
I wasn't talking about you specifically.
I know, but I feel like I experienced it, like, not caring about it.
Yeah.
Not, like, at least...
Oh, that's a good point. It's a not caring.
Exactly. Not like I'm not willing to. Like, when Josh and I were first dating, we would have conversations like this, and we would get to a point where it's like, well, how is this fruitful? Mm-hmm. Like, what's the point here? What are we accomplishing?
See, I feel that way about, like, sports teams.
Yeah. And so that's, like, then I get frustrated. Or you ask so many questions that you get to the point of, like, well, what do you even know? Like, what do you know? Oh, and that used to make me so upset. Because he would be like, I only know 2 things. You only know 2 things? And that's because he would say he doesn't know anything for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because you ask questions like that, and it's like, we can, like, hurt our brains thinking about these things, but, like, now what have we accomplished? Mm-hmm. But I guess not everything you do in life, you have to accomplish something. Yeah. The Lord made us so that we think about these things for our enjoyment.
Right. There's, like, truth-seeking for truth's sake.
Yeah.
And then there's, like, practical
Right.
stuff. Like,
right.
Like, how can I... Like, what is my brain is one question, but then also, how can I set my brain up to be efficient and make good decisions in the real world?
Mm-hmm. And it is interesting because, like, Greek philosophers made a really big emphasis on the practical side of things. Like, moral philosophy, like, if you were only focused on, like, well, what is the universe? Like, that wasn't enough for them. They wanted a moral aspect of it, of, like, well, but how am I supposed to live my life? Mm-hmm. And it seems like a lot of people's view of philosophy these days is like it's just a bunch of people thinking and they're doing nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's maybe true in some ways, but
Well, why do you think the Greek were like, what is the universe? But why did they get to the point of how am I supposed to interact in it?
I don't know. You should ask them.
Well, I'm asking, do you like, what if you put a bunch of people together and they don't have any knowledge or experience of things like we understand now? Do you think they'd come to the same, like, there's got to be rules to how we interact with the things
Right. I mean,
that are here?
anytime you have like people interacting with each other, especially like over repeated interactions, like you have, a Greek city-state where this, a couple hundred people all know each other and all interact with each other all the time, and then you have, the neighbors and the enemies and everyone else. You have to have some kind of a shared idea of what, good behavior is.
Yeah.
Like what's going to help us, what's going to...
Well, like in most societies, everybody has agreed that eating another person is bad.
Right.
And they just like came up with that. Like, but why? I know why that's bad, but like, why is that bad if you don't like?
Right. I mean, but there are exceptions too, because there are
Yeah,
cultures that, it's fine for your enemies, but not for, your tribe.
You can eat your enemies,
or it's, there was a tribe that decided, let's start eating brains. And they very quickly got diseases from that. And basically almost wiped themselves out.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like God is, well, there's that passage in Romans, is it Romans 3? You memorized all of Romans.
I don't know all the references, but something like that. Like
when Paul's talking about the law of God being written on the heart of man.
Yeah.
And I think in that, he's not like, I can't remember if there's indication in that verse that he's specifically talking about like the Greek philosophers, because he does reference like the Greek philosophers a fair amount in the epistles, but like
well he said like even those who don't have the law, if they do by nature the things that the law requires, they show that they have.
And I think he's like they sometimes acquit themselves, sometimes condemn themselves, like basically showing that they know that there should be condemnation and they should be acquitted,
right,
or whatever.
So yeah, that's something different, and even from the practical aspect of how can we cooperate with our friends and defend ourselves against our enemies. There's something innate in our conscience that says this is right, this is wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like, I guess to bring it back to like that how versus why question, like how does that come about? Not really sure. Why is it there? I know that from the Bible, like it's there to lead us to God.
So we have no excuse.
Yeah, so we have no excuse to see that we have a need to be reconciled to God, and that we have can be condemned for our sin.
I was just gonna go to a different thing.
That's fine. No, that's fine.
Enough of that.
We'll tie a little bow.
Yeah. What Enneagram number would you say you are?
For a while, I thought I was a 9. I'm probably closer to a 5.
Wing? Do you know your wing?
Don't know. I have aspects of both 4 and 6 in me.
Did you find the Enneagram was a helpful tool for you and Megan in your relationship?
Yes. I wouldn't say, world-changingly helpful, but it's a one more useful tool.
Yeah. In what ways did you feel like it was helpful?
It's just that people have written about how does a 5 interact with a 2? What are the struggles? What are the things to keep an eye out for? And some of that is things that we already know, but it's good to have a reminder of. And
how did you discover you're not a 9? Because I would be like, oh yeah, clearly Ben's a 9.
Right. Megan thought I was more of a 5. And I guess just reading kind of the descriptions of everything. And then what the security and stress movements are make more sense for a 5 than for a 9.
So do you think your relationship with God is more, since you are not you don't express emotions physically, or maybe you don't experience them as strongly. Do you think your relationship with God is more intellectual?
It's definitely more internal.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if intellectual is the word I would use, but like I am aware of the way I respond to things internally.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously God's aware of that as well.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like noticing a beautiful sunset, praising God for that internally. Nothing really changes on the outside, but God and I have that moment together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, and I mean, I wouldn't call that really an intellectual thing, but it's just an internal thing.
Well, I was just wondering because the psychopath I was talking about, he only has an intellectual relationship with God because he doesn't experience emotions.
Yeah.
So that's why I was wondering.
So I'm not a psychopath.
Well, I didn't think you were, Ben. I didn't bring you here to try to prove one way or the other.
Well, actually, I did want to ask. So, why did you want to come on the podcast? Or did Megan make you?
Well, Megan definitely wanted me to,
Yeah.
but I also wanted to. I've thought a lot about who I am as a person, and I've noticed how different I am from other people. And I thought it would be fun to explore some of that and share in a way that people otherwise wouldn't find out about.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was
Like it's not important to me to keep myself secret from other people. It's just I naturally don't share.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so having that opportunity where it's in a structured setting is a good thing.
Well, to be honest, I was like not nervous. I was excited to like know more about you, but like also kind of worried of like how do you do that?
Yeah.
With Ben. Because I know both of your sisters and I love them dearly. So when I look at your face, I go, oh, you look like Laura and Sarah. And I really love them. And so
But
I
when
wanted
you
to,
look deeper.
yeah. So I really wanted to get to know you, but I didn't think I would be able to even understand you very much. Because I have a big qualm when people say I don't have emotions.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, surely he has emotions. But it's been awesome getting to know that you have them and like getting to understand that and just knowing that you're not expressing it because that's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
But I feel like you exemplify who and how God is in a very different way than most people would. And you show that in your life in a very different way. And I really appreciate it because you're not letting your emotions change how you act.
Yeah.
I feel like that's like God and like his forbearance. That's like God and how he thinks about things.
Right.
And how he doesn't like right now, even how the world is so evil. I would think if I were God, I'd like burn the whole thing down right now.
Right.
But I can imagine like that's not going to be your first response to things. When things are hard, you're not going to respond very rashly. And that's how God is as well.
Yeah. And I guess part of the way I think about that with God is he has the timeless, eternal perspective. Like he knows the end from the beginning. He's intimately aware of what's happening in the world right now, but he's also intimately aware of how everyone's going to die and what all their experiences are going to be and what's going to happen at the end.
Yeah.
And so having all that in mind together, he can see the justice in it and the plan that he has.
Well, and you probably, so do you, when I think of like my shortcomings, I let them limit me. Or like if I'm like really sad, I think, well, I can't do this right now because I'm very sad. I'm going to go lay down.
Yeah.
I let my emotions stop me from living life, but it seems like you don't use your emotions as an excuse from living life.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely have other shortcomings.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying you're perfect, but
well, yeah. But like I have, even with emotion, I have a difficulty, helping someone who's struggling or connecting in that way. And it's easy for me to say, I can't help this person, whatever. And that had been my response until I got married.
And you didn't have that option?
I didn't have that option. I now have someone who has a problem, and it's my responsibility, and I can't walk away.
I can't leave, and she won't stop feeling.
So it's definitely a stretch, and it's something I need to grow more in.
Yeah, I mean, we're all trying to get to that center place of moderation because Like, while you're maybe more intellectual and logical than most people, other people are more emotional than probably as healthy, or I definitely like feel like I have been moving. Okay, I said earlier that being married to Elena hasn't made me less emotional. I don't know, I maybe just don't attribute it to being married to Elena, but I feel like I've become a less emotional person in an unhealthy way. Like,
Less unhealthy.
less healthy. Wait. Yes, less I don't know what I said, but less unhealthy. I'm doing good, guys. Like, something that I definitely used to do is, like, it felt good to feel something really strong, whether that was good or bad. So if it was a bad emotion, I might feed into it of, like, oh, yeah, this really sucks. Oh, yeah. Or, like, yeah, woe is me, woe is me. And it's, like, that's something that was definitely on track to ruin my life. So I don't know if it was necessarily, I don't think it was necessarily getting married to Elena, but coming back to that place of trying to temper my excesses.
Yeah.
Well, it's probably like corralling them and controlling them and expressing them in a Christ-honoring way rather than just letting them fly and affect whoever and run your life.
Yeah. One interesting thing about the way I interact with emotions, I really enjoy like sad music and like tragedies. Like like Les Mis is one of my favorite movies. But it's almost like a workout for me. Like a physical challenge, I can do something and appreciate how I overcame the challenge. Whereas in this case, it's more of I appreciate how I receive this, sad event, and I'm affected by it in a good way.
Yeah.
Where it's like it's pleasant to feel it and then move on.
Yeah. That's the thing that I love about movies is the emotional aspect of them, of we're just, as human beings, we're just really dumb, and we really think the people on the screen are real people.
Oh, yeah.
And we're connecting with them as real people. And it's like...
What's frustrating to me, though, is when they're stupid.
Yeah.
It's like, no, that was not a good choice. Like, it's one thing if circumstances beyond your control ruin your life, and I can empathize with that. It's another if you're just making dumb choices and causing your own problems.
And this is actually your fault.
Yeah.
I complain about those movies the whole time. Don't enjoy them.
Yeah, well, maybe I'm just dumb enough that I don't even realize that the person's making bad decisions.
I was thinking, I would have done that.
I guess, but yeah, I just love that, you get to experience another person's emotions through a movie. Mm-hmm. I think, there is a way in which it can kind of cheapen then your interactions with other people because they're not as dramatic. You're not saving the world with people who you go to church with.
Right. It also reinforces I don't have to do anything to solve anyone's problems.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Because the movie will resolve it for me.
Yes. Everything will resolve itself. The good side always wins.
That's interesting.
And yeah, so there's a bad side to being a passive observer to that. Mm-hmm. But that, I don't know. That's kind of one of the reasons I want to do this podcast. I've kind of talked about this, but just helping myself just focus more on the people around me. Of every single person has their own world. Even though I can't prove that they're conscious, I'm going to assume they are. And I'm going to try and understand that and going to try to get to know them more. And kind of like you were talking about in college, just realizing the ways in which it's not that I don't like people. It's not that I couldn't get along with people. It's just I don't even think about oh, these people are interesting people.
Yeah.
And I could get to know them, and that would be fun.
So, we probably should be closing up here.
What's our run time, Nathan?
Almost 2 hours.
Okay.
Um,
No one thought we could do it. No one thought we could do a 2-hour podcast with Ben Weieneth, but we have done it.
So I have experienced that if you're too overly expressive with your emotion and too in tune with them and consider and think about them constantly, that makes you kind of selfish. You're always in your head. You're always thinking about yourself. You're not really interacting and living in the world. Would you say at the other extreme of that, if you are not in tune with your emotions, you're not experiencing them, do you think that makes you selfish too? Because I would think that would make you not selfish, because you're kind of not really thinking about yourself.
I definitely have the ability to discard my own desires and do what needs to be done. Mm-hmm. But I definitely have selfish tendencies as well. Mm-hmm. And some of that comes out in the, I've done all these things for all these people. I deserve this for myself, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. That I have to watch out for.
Yeah, that seems to go back to your sister-in-law arguing. You have a brother. You have a brother and a sister, but I don't have a sister. It's the logical parsing of it.
Right. So yeah, that comes back to Megan and I. One of the differences between us is she's very much the give everything you have to the people that you are around, even if there's nothing left for you, and you get burned out and frustrated and angry because of it. Whereas I'm of the mindset of I will ask nothing of anyone and give nothing to anyone unless I feel like it. And as long as I don't make demands on other people, then I deserve to not respond to their demands.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think selfishness is a universal human struggle. But
at first it's very useful though, being selfish. If you're a child, you need to. That's how you stay alive.
Maybe if you're a war refugee in Africa, but
yes. Well, I think even as a baby, you can't worry about
true.
other people.
That's true.
You've got to live.
That's true.
And
Babies
so I
do
think
need to be selfish.
when you grow up, then that for some people it doesn't really go away. You keep being selfish.
Yeah, well, I think it's our natural tendency, but definitely it is interesting because for someone like Megan, God calls us to be merciful and to be generous, but he also calls us to be wise. And so yeah, there is a point where you can give too much, but then on the flip side, for someone like you, God doesn't call us to enact perfect justice in the world. He calls us to be merciful and to give to people who don't deserve it.
He doesn't he wants justice. He wants us.
But he said,
I don't desire.
You go.
I think I don't know how to phrase it, but I feel he does want some justice here.
Yeah, he does, but I guess I'm saying that he is going to bring about the justice. When he says, "Vengeance is mine."
Right.
Oh yeah,
at an individual level, we're to act justly, and if you've been put in a position of authority, you use that authority in a just way.
Yes.
But you don't go, avenging crimes as a vigilante.
Yeah, I guess I'm more talking about the parable of the unjust servant who, the Lord or his master forgives him this huge debt.
Oh yeah.
And then he can't go and forgive.
Yeah.
This small debt that this other servant owes to him.
Yeah.
Where the place that we are at as Christians and as people who have been redeemed out of sin and death is God wants us to show mercy because he's shown us mercy.
When he says, I desire mercy, not sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
But
sorry.
Probably a good place to wrap it up unless you guys
I have one more thing.
Okay, you just say it.
So, what was it like having children for you? Emotionally and interact, because children are very excitable.
Yeah, this I could go on for a long time about this.
Please do.
So the whole process of like being on my own in college, I had a lot of free time. And then the process of dating and then getting engaged and
Just
getting married
losing
and
yourself.
having multiple children,
Yeah.
it is the amount of time I have for myself in a week is very small. And so that's one aspect of it that I've had to grow in. And before having children, I didn't really know how I would interact with them. Like I was like, what does it even mean to be a parent? Like what is, and it wasn't until I had Aria, like in my arms, that I got a glimpse of that.
Yeah.
But it took time to like grow into that role and understand what that means. But yeah, I mean, at this point, it's a lot of responsibility. It's a lot of like demands on my time and my freedom.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a struggle of that selfishness comes back again, where I've given you so much this day, this week, whatever.
Kids don't care.
Do you need another meal right now? but yeah, so it's a lot of fun though too.
Yeah.
Being able to see how they're all different from each other and different from me and from Megan.
How has it like changed you? Because I can imagine that would have a very profound change on somebody that's like has an internal world very built up and grew up with a close-knit family. Like that was your family, but now you have your own.
Yeah.
And now you have more people to worry about, where you're saying, if I don't make demands on other people, they don't make demands on me, then we're good.
Right.
But you, like, children are constantly making demands.
And it's almost like the overwhelming, constant demand on me.
Yeah.
Is like drowning out any opportunity for me to introspect about how it's affecting me.
Yeah.
It's just I'm in survival mode all the time.
That's very interesting. Well, I hope you can get some.
Yeah. Hopefully they become more self-sufficient. And then
I'm sure
think
they
they
will.
do.
Yeah.
Eventually they become adults, I've heard.
Yeah.
Then they come back to you and they need more help babysitting and planning trips and such. But well, thank you so much for coming here, Ben.
It was a lot of
and
fun.
honestly, I could talk to you even longer, so you should definitely come back. I hope we didn't scare you away with all our
No,
questions.
this is a lot of fun.
And saying that you're a
Awesome.
psychopath and all that.
I'm not afraid of that term. I know what I am.
Yeah, I know. You've accepted it.
So for those listening, you can do exactly what Ben Weieneth did and ask us to be on the podcast. We'd love to talk to you about lots of different things. So let us know. Talk to us. I do want to make like one sort of logistical announcement. I've decided that I'm going to start releasing the episodes every other Sunday. So, let's see, I can't remember the date, but last couple Sundays ago, we released the episode of Brian being interviewed, and this upcoming, you're listening to this in the future, so I shouldn't reference dates like this, but every other Sunday is when you can expect an episode, so.
And if you have comments and critiques, you can tell us, but we'll probably forget. So you can comment on YouTube.
Yeah, comment on YouTube.
Or you can comment on Spotify or wherever you're watching this. And thank you guys for your positive feedback. There's been so much positive feedback. But honestly, please go talk to our guests that we have on the show that you've listened to the episodes, because you guys are telling me like, oh, this person is very encouraging. But please go and tell them that they were really encouraging.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like, go and talk to Ben and ask him lots of questions. I'm sure he would really enjoy it.
Don't ask him about emotions, though.
Oh, it seems like he enjoyed that too.
I will talk about emotions.
Okay, he'll talk
See,
about
there you
emotions.
go.
I will not approach you to talk to you, but if you come to me,
Yes.
I will talk to you for about a minute.
Unless you like Magic the Gathering.
Unless you like Magic the Gathering.
You can make him stay. So thank you guys for watching. The next guest is Katie Huther, so that's exciting.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Thank you for listening.